Okay, on the old website I had a tutorial on making stone beads. It was an article I did for Lapidary Journal, probably in the mid-90s. The big problem with it is it was just drawings and text. Unfortunately, now that I can do videos with the aid of my friend Greg, I can better explain things. So I'm going to draw some bead shapes. The first one will be a heishi bead. Oops. Standard heishi bead is, if you look at it at an end, obviously it's got a hole right here. They're flat on the face and flat on the sides. The hole goes through here. If you make another heishi bead that's flat on the face and it's going on a curve, and you have your string going through it, the beads invariably won't lay nice side by side. If you get up on the upper part of the strand, they do. One of the bad things about heishi beads is you're going to really make your customers angry if they have any hair on their neck or whatever, because typically where these beads meet, they'll grab hair. So when you pull the beads off or something, you're going to be pulling hair out of your neck or your head or whatever. So that's the standard heishi bead. Now I'll go to another type. Okay, as opposed to the heishi, what I early on developed to try to get me straighter lines, rather than go with the straight across, I started rounding the edges, which they call a rondelle. So then you avoid the grabbing a hair where the square edges came. One of the problems with this style of bead, with this perfectly flat, again you encounter where the beads don't lay nicely side by side. They do in certain spots, but if you get down, the closer you are down to the bottom of the strand, there's going to end up being little gaps like that and like that. I'm exaggerating it, but you just end up with gaps, and it just takes away from the flow of what you're after. So now we'll go to the next one. Okay, after I figured out or started doing the rounded edge, it gave me a much nicer bead, but I still wasn't really happy with how they laid side by side. So then I started, I'm going to do the curves, the two domed edges first. I started doing a very slight angle or curve on the sides all the way down to the hole. And if your hole obviously is right here, your next bead is going to have a tendency to go like that more. I'm exaggerating that. If this was a thicker bead, then yeah, that's how it would look. But what you're after is a slight curve on the sides of your beads. Some beads that you make, that's a very drastic curve, but even on the real thin beads, which I'll be showing you some finished beads, I know Susie wears a strand of opal beads that they've just got a real slight curve on the sides, and that allows them to lay better and look better. So now to the next one. Okay, the last three steps that are beads I showed you are basically for thinner beads. You know, you start getting a little bit of thickness to your beads, then you can really start working on the side. I'm going to draw an oversized one. Well, no, I'll do a medium one. Like that. And like that. Get your dome, get your dome. Hole goes through this way. Once you can start getting a pretty good curve on the side of the beads, they end up where they all lay perfect. You know, I'm going to go ahead and draw the larger one now too. And then when you get into a real big, wide bead, you can do a real nice dome on the sides. And then, you know, you can either just dome it that way or dome it that way. You can, this is an example of not a super wide bead, but a real nicely shaped bead. That you notice that the sides of it have a slight curve, not a real strong curve, and then a real nice dome that blends in with the sides. It's a real smooth transition, you know, and that's what you're after. You need to be aware everywhere when you're shaping the bead. You know, you can't have it, the flow stop. You have to have a real super smooth flow to give you what I would call an ultimate bead. Okay, these are some beads that were leftovers or whatever. Anyway, this will give you an idea of why you do the sides. You give it a slight curve. If you notice these beads, even when I start closing them up, they don't separate. They stay touching each other. And that's basically because the sides are just slightly curved. If they were flat, they wouldn't look as nice. They wouldn't lay as nice. They'd be not as classy, I guess is a good way to put it. But, you know, you can tell. Just go like that, and you don't really see any separation. It's that way down there on the bottom where they're small. Okay, one of the things I learned over the years, beads are the most wasteful use of material going. You know, a lot of people think, oh, you're full of poop. I did the measurements, the weights, this, that, and the other. When you make beads, you can assume you're going to lose 80% of your starting weight. And that's a lot. I know one time many years ago I had been asked by an opal miner to make his wife a strand of beads out of some beautiful material. It had a lot of sand and stuff on it, and by the time I got it cleaned up and ready to start drilling, I took the leftover dust that was in the bottom of my flat lap, put it in a bottle or jar, put some water in the jar, and I walked in and showed it to Susie. $3,000 worth of sand. You know, but that's part of the cost of doing, you know, especially higher end materials. You know, you're working with material that costs you $50 a gram. You know, the waste, when you start having that much waste, you have to balance that into your final cost. And, you know, a lot of people can't justify it. You know, I paid $37,000 for a parcel of opal once, and I got, I got 3 very nice strands, and then I got 2 shorter strands. And by the time things shook out over time, a lot of the material started cracking the finished beads. One of the strands, carat value, one of the strands I lost $10,000 on just for cracks. So it's an interesting sport.